Okay.
Well, I'm Sebastian Shaw,
I'm Patrick Bett.
and welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah.
Today we'll be discussing Chris McCandless and how he's a fool or whether he's a hero.
Yeah. Well, alright, so I'll start with my thinking. I personally think he's an idiot, right? So, and my first point is obviously, so around page 29, it says this quote about him loading his possessions in and then trying to walk around Lake Mead. But it was like mid-July, it was really, really hot in those temperatures. And he had a heat stroke and almost died. But was saved by boaters, I think. And so, I mean, why would he just walk around a lake? He didn't do his research, he didn't do anything like that. He didn't account for how hot it'll be.
Yep.
He didn't account for anything, and he just had a heat stroke and almost died.
Yeah.
So, next point is going to be how in page 55, how he just cut everyone out of his life, even the ones he befriended people, he grew close to them, they'd pay him, he'd help them, they'd help, yeah, and so he's a fool because he just cut everyone out of his life and just, I mean, that's not a good, you know?
Yeah, I just don't just saying, like, cutting out somebody, I mean, they're part of your life, you shouldn't just cut them
Exactly.
out.
I mean, he had a good life set, but he died alone in a bus like an idiot. My next point is on page 109. It was about Chris being a high achiever in life. He was really smart. He'd always bring in A's. I think it said he only got like one F in physics because he just refused to do something.
For sure.
Something like that. And then, yeah, it's just dumb. I mean, he had a good life set. He could have gone to like Harvard, something like that, I'm guessing. He was that smart. Probably could have had a good job, good paying job, good family, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And let me scroll this down. And my last quote is on how he could have survived on page 174. It's about how if he had a map, right? There was a research facility about like a couple of miles out that he could have walked to and crossed the river that he wasn't going to cross. And this just shows he's an idiot because he just didn't prepare enough for it. He just didn't prepare and died because of it.
Yeah.
Just because he's an idiot.
Absolutely. And I'm going to agree with him on some of these points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As my take on this is that I believe Chris is both a fool and somewhat of a hero. As for example, on page 4, or you have a character in the book called Jim Gallion. He said something along the lines where Chris wasn't carrying enough materials or was very unprepared for somebody going on this kind of trip. So this states that Chris was overestimating his abilities to keep going and underestimating the Alaskan bush. And so another example of this is on page 170. Chris wrote down in his journal that he was lonely and scared. Now, it's kind of his fault. He's kind of foolish. First of all, he was lonely and he didn't let anybody know. As Pat said earlier, he kind of cut out everybody's life.
Exactly.
So this kind of led him to going alone. And he was also underprepared. He didn't have any flare guns with him. He burned all his money. He didn't have any way to signal his location. Yeah. A big example of how he's also foolish is a cry for help on page 198. Mm-hmm. He wrote down in a journal somewhere where, well, he didn't he was just crying for help. He couldn't do much. Like, nobody's out there and is going to look for him. He didn't tell anybody. He's also alone. As I've said before, he has nothing with him to prepare himself.
But I think if he told his people where he's gone instead of cutting everyone out of his life, he would have lived. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And then a certain aspect that made him somewhat heroic is that his dedication and persistence to keep going. And this happened throughout the entire story. On page 199, he took a picture where he was smiling. And some may find that heroic as he's smiling to the very end.
Yeah, exactly.